This video is sponsored by War Thunder. Sam Altman is Silicon Valley's golden child, the next model of tech CEO, humble and unassuming but with a big vision for the future. His carefully managed public image has been designed to take the best bits from other CEOs, all while ironing out all of the wrinkles. He's Steve Jobs but without the toxicity, he's Elon Musk but without the controversy, he's Zuckerberg but slightly less robotic. And only slightly. Sam tries to put forward a humble image online, leaving lowercase Twitter comments about how he wouldn't spend lots of money on a car. But he's also been spotted driving cars worth far more than the Porsche he was talking about. Like most tech CEOs, Altman loves to go on podcasts, but he just can't resist his urge to dodge any uncomfortable questions. Just listen to him dodge this very simple, direct question on Theo Von's podcast.
A lot of these guys have bunkers. Zucky has a bunkie, I know that, somewhere out in Hawaii. Do you have a bunker?
I have like underground concrete heavy reinforced basements, but I don't have anything I would call a bunker.
Hold on, dude. Look, I'll let you keep me on the ropes in a lot of this conversation, but I am gonna call that out as a dang bunker, dude.
I have been thinking I should really do a good version of one of those, but okay. I don't have what I would call a bunker, but it has been on my mind.
He's just the same as the rest of them, and the fact that he would try and bend the truth over something that confirms that makes it all the more obvious. And it's just the tip of the iceberg, and unfortunately there's mounting evidence that Altman is far worse than the average tech billionaire. This Person of the Year has left a long trail of lawsuits, allegations, powerful enemies, and possibly even murders. What's even worse is that so much of the future could depend on this man. The world economy is all in on AI, with trillions of dollars riding on Sam Altman's personal promises for the future. And if they turn out to be just another set of lies, the consequences could be cataclysmic. That's why the future of the world could very well hinge on the reasons why I hate Sam Altman. To many, it did just seem like he came out of nowhere. As ChatGPT skyrocketed to popularity overnight, so did his profile to a wider audience. But people more connected to Silicon Valley have known Sam Altman for years. Far from being an outsider, he was a central figure at the very heart of the tech world. He worked on the inside, brushing shoulders with billionaires like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. But even before that, Sam Altman was just a kid. He was the first child of four to a politically connected real estate developer father and a dermatologist mother. In other words, Sam was born into high society. And Sam was a bright kid and clearly a prodigy when it came to technology. His semi-official biography, The Optimist, writes that at just 2 years old, he was using his dad's VCR player to watch Sesame Street. It also doesn't shy away from how differently wired he was. When he was still just 2, Sam's mother took him to the playground. But instead of running to play on the swings or to hang off the monkey bars, Sam just sat down on a bench. Quote, "No mummy, I'm going to sit with you here, and let's just watch the babies play." At the age of 8, Sam was then given his first computer. He almost immediately learned how to program on it. In The Optimist, Sam uses this as an opportunity to lay the seeds for his vision for AI. As the author writes, quote, "I just remember thinking that someday the computer was going to learn to think." They then go on to explain how Sam needed to get away from the participation trophies and into an environment that more suited his genius. At around the age of 13, Sam transferred to a prestigious private school where he made his first real connections with upper society, which mixed inclusivity with massive pressure for students to get good grades. He wasn't just a stereotypical nerd though. Friends and family do describe a young Sam Altman as confident and able to convince people of almost anything. His passion for whatever he was working towards was infectious. His father had used this family trait to work on building affordable housing. Sam Altman's plans were entirely different. For college, he enrolled at Stanford to major in computer science, although he didn't last very long. The connections again were far more important for Sam than the lectures or the courses he took. At this point in the 2000s, Stanford had cemented its reputation as the feeder school for Silicon Valley. Tiny startups and tech giants alike prowled its corridors, looking for any young prodigy programmers and the next generation of entrepreneurs. Altman's general intelligence and his tech knowledge combined with his uncanny ability to persuade people of his vision were a magic combo. Within only 2 years at the school, he got caught up in the Silicon Valley fever, leaving to begin his own startup. Admittedly though, it wasn't anything special. Looped, as it was called, was a social network designed to focus on real-life location tracking and a kind of check-in feature. In 2008, a 23-year-old Sam Altman gave this presentation on the app. Obviously, we know a lot more about what social media needs to work now than we did back in 2008. It does have some good elements that look like things Snapchat would add years later, but even then, it was clear that there were lots of problems. For this app to have ever worked, it would have needed constant surveillance and tracking. At the same time, people would also need to engage with the app almost constantly. They would always have to be updating their status to make it work properly. Altman didn't really need to convince the general public about Loops yet though. Instead, his role as CEO was to sell the app to the expansive world of Silicon Valley venture capitalism. This was, funnily enough, something he found very easy, and you can kind of see why. Take a listen to young Sam telling an interviewer why Loops will take off based on his vision for the future.
I think that we've crossed over this point where now the value perceived of sharing my location outweighs the privacy concerns of doing so. And so I think now that that's happened, people understand how great it is to share their location and all the benefits of that. And so I think it's just going to continue to explode. And then in another few years, it'll be the norm to share your location, and it'll be weird when you don't.
He has this uncanny ability to make his vision for the future seem completely believable. Looped will succeed because people will soon stop caring about privacy and want to share their location all the time. It'll happen because of how obviously valuable Looped is. Today, we know none of that really happened in the way he imagined it, but investors at the time completely bought in. Straight out of the gate, Looped received $5 million from various Silicon Valley investors. But as the years went on, the app never really got off the ground. Altman boasted about a large and healthy user base in interviews, but who actually remembers this app at all? It didn't stop him from convincing investors to put in more money though. Over its 7-year lifespan, the app was periodically injected with outside funds, keeping it alive. On paper though, it was a failure. Despite all of his vision and his confidence, Looped became a footnote in tech history. But as we can speculate now, that might have never been the purpose of Looped for Sam Altman. He probably believed in the app with all of his heart at one point, but as time went on, Sam became increasingly involved in the inner workings of Silicon Valley's investment engine. His status as a fast-rising startup entrepreneur was all he needed to make connections with powerful people like Peter Thiel and Reid Hoffman. Eventually, his friends at Sequoia Capital would step in and take Looped off of his hands, allowing Sam to net a few $1 million in the process, despite having pretty much nothing concrete to show for years and years of work. But Looped had given Sam a foothold in Silicon Valley. But before we continue, I want to tell you about War Thunder, as War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and it's available right now for free on PC, consoles, and mobile. And when I say comprehensive, I mean insane levels of detail. You can take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships, all across 10 major nations, ranging from biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s, all the way to modern fighter jets and main battle tanks. One of the things that really sets War Thunder apart is its realistic damage model. There's no simple hit point bars here. Every vehicle is modeled down to individual components like engines, fuel tanks, weapons, and crew. If you land a shot, it actually matters where it hits. And when something gets destroyed, the X-ray view shows you exactly what happened, where the shell penetrated, what systems failed, and what ultimately took the vehicle out. It's ridiculously satisfying. They've also just launched the all-new mobile version on iOS and Android, so you can jump into massive multiplayer ground, sea, and air battles wherever you are. Controls are intuitive, the graphics are impressive, and it still feels like the full-scale War Thunder on your phone. There's also a game mode for everyone. Arcade for fast-paced action, realistic for a perfect balance of authenticity and fun, and simulator mode if you want the full no compromises experience. Plus, you get deep customization, historical camouflages, and community-made skins to personalize your vehicles. And the best part is, you don't need any fancy gear. You can play everything with just a keyboard and a mouse or a controller, and it runs smoothly even on lower-end machines, all thanks to its heavily optimized engine. So play War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile devices now by using my links in the pinned comment or video description. New and returning players on PC and consoles that haven't played in the last 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms. That includes multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account. It's available for a limited time only, so be quick. And his next move would make him his unofficial king. In 2011, Sam joined Y Combinator. It wasn't just an investment fund, it was the startup accelerator in Silicon Valley. Airbnb, Twitch, Reddit, Stripe, DoorDash, Coinbase, and dozens of other household names all owed their existence to it in one way or another. Sam became its central figure. He came to decide which startups got funding, which were favored, and which were ignored and starved of cash before they could rock the boat. It also gave him the opportunity to get in on the ground floor with tons of potentially massive companies. A scattering of small investments could net him millions down the line. Only a fool or someone with completely pure morals would have resisted getting rich off of this insider knowledge. Sam was neither. He was right on the front lines of venture capitalism, picking out the prize apples for them to pluck from the trees. But while extending his own web of connections and influence, Sam still found a way to make it sound like he was working towards some sort of greater good for society.
I have no desire to go be a venture capitalist. I feel like where I can sort of really contribute to the world is making startups happen that would otherwise not, and YC is a way to do that.
In 2014, Sam was then made president of Y Combinator, and his personal reach extended even further. He was only 28 years old, and to many, it was obvious how much power he had in his hands. But to deflect from those kinds of questions, Sam had a special answer. You could be forgiven for thinking that Silicon Valley had just no real ideology or philosophy, other than to make as much money as possible, whatever the cost. But for years, a philosophical movement had been building in Silicon Valley that seemed to offer guilty tech bros a way to justify their actions. Effective altruism is pretty simple on the surface. Springing from the work of the Australian ethicist Peter Singer, its basic principle is that you should do whatever you can to make as many people as happy as possible. For Sam Altman, this logic justified his career choices. He decided that he would be wasting his life if he spent it on working at a soup kitchen or even running a regular charity. Instead, he could use his skills to make as much money as possible. He could then use the profits to fund more charity work than he could ever accomplish directly working for charity. Plus, if he ever got to the top of the tech world, it would prevent someone more evil taking his place and misusing the power for their own gain. Some of Silicon Valley's biggest scam artists have cloaked themselves in this exact ideology. When Elizabeth Holmes was asked how she felt being the youngest billionaire in the world, she immediately leant on this to make herself look humble.
The youngest billionaire in the world. Is that heady when you hear that?
You know, it's not what matters. What matters is how well we do in trying to make people's lives better. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I work the way that I work, and that's why I love what I'm doing so much.
Sam Bankman-Fried was also a big fan of the movement, later using it to try and excuse his actions in an interview taken while FTX was literally collapsing from within.
You know, I was thinking a lot about, bed nets and malaria, about saving people from diseases no one should die from, about animal welfare, about pandemic prevention, and, what could be done on a large scale to help mitigate those.
Sam Altman would use these ideas to his own benefit. Just like Bankman-Fried and Holmes, he uses them as a shield, but he also used them as an excuse to gain even more power and start OpenAI. Obviously, if tech oligarchs had actually stuck to real effective altruism, it would have been great. They could have spent their vast excesses of money on food for the hungry or by investing in vital infrastructure. Instead, the movement took a much more different turn. Top minds in the tech world got bored with this grounded version of effective altruism. They instead became obsessed with the idea of doing the best thing for the billions or even trillions of people who might exist in our distant future. In their minds, they needed to save these people from a coming threat, one that could potentially wipe out humanity completely: evil AGI. While it was still a niche position at the time, people like Elon Musk and even some top AI researchers had begun to become incredibly worried about artificial general intelligence.
So I think we should be cautious with AI, and there should be some government oversight because it's a danger to the public.
They thought that if we kept on making breakthroughs with AI, then we would quickly stumble across an artificial intelligence capable of improving itself and escaping its digital chains. If it decided that humans weren't worth keeping around, then it could go full Skynet and just destroy humanity. Preventing this outcome outweighed all the mosquito nets and aid packages that you could dream of. Musk saw this as an imminent threat, especially considering that Google was well ahead in AI development, and seemed to have no care about human life. They had all the power, all the funding, and they had hired pretty much all of the top AI researchers. With their profit incentive, Musk believed that they could easily create the next HAL 9000. To beat Google and save humanity, Musk needed a startup unlike any other. This was what brought him into contact with Sam Altman and his network of wealthy investors who shared his concerns with AI. Over the course of a few months, they came up with a plan to beat Google. Without any other way to compete, Musk, Altman, and the gang would have to attack them on an ideological level. In her book Empire of AI and an interview since it was released, Karen Howe describes how this all took place.
Because of that fear, Altman and Musk then thought, we need to do a nonprofit, not have these profit-driven incentives. We're gonna focus on being completely open, transparent, and also collaborative to the point of self-sacrificing if necessary. I have come to speculate, this is not based on any documents that I read or anything, I've come to speculate that part of the reason why they started as a nonprofit in the first place is because it was a great recruitment tool for getting at that bottleneck. They could not compete on salaries with Google, but they could compete on a sense of mission.
This is the reason that Musk named the company OpenAI. And today it's just completely ironic. But back then it was truly an open attempt at making AI without any profit motives. The ideological approach worked at first. It enabled the company to poach lots of Google's top AI researchers despite the drop in salary. It also meant that the company had tons of funds to work with, a large portion of them coming from Musk himself. Obviously today we know that OpenAI is one of the most profit-incentivized capitalistic companies around. Musk is currently in the process of suing Altman and OpenAI, accusing them of having always been profit-motivated and of duping him for years into funding their schemes. Whether or not that's true will come out in the courts, but the emails we've seen already from the legal process are just incredibly telling. Just take a look at this exchange between Altman and Musk, which seems to suggest they were all in on the grift by 2017. In the next email in the exchange, Musk offers to give them all prototype Teslas. But this happy state of affairs didn't last for long. As Altman pushed to make the company just as profit-seeking as the competition, he also worked on muscling Musk out of the business altogether. A few months later, Musk was angry at being taken along for a ride. Instead of preventing a dark AI future, he might have just added another malicious influence into the mix. As time went on, momentum at OpenAI grew and it attracted more and more investors. This was Altman's strength. His pitch was relatively simple. AGI was going to change the world entirely. Getting in on the ground level with OpenAI, who had a good chance at being the first to make the breakthrough, could therefore be the most profitable investment ever. It was amazing because he didn't need to back it up with much. Just being one of the biggest players in the game was already enough, and the potential of AI sold itself. When ChatGPT went huge in late 2022, it did seem to confirm everything he had been saying. Investors then poured in their investments in hopes of catching the wave. OpenAI went from a relatively small tech company to one of the biggest tech names in the entire world overnight. Altman's world tour then began, where he spent months talking to world leaders and billionaires alike. It was the next part of the plan, getting those juicy government contracts and expanding his power beyond the limits of Silicon Valley and into the halls of government. Other tech companies were quick to join the craze, pouring in their own billions to push their own AI research and products. Even during this golden age, Altman was still playing a dangerous game. Behind the scenes, he ran OpenAI in a strange, secretive way. He hid the development and the release of ChatGPT from the rest of the company's board. He took all the credit for its creation. He seemed to position himself to get all of the recognition, the power, and the glory for himself. It was these resentments that led to the failed coup in 2023. But because of both Microsoft and the company's regular employees backing him up, it completely failed and only increased Altman's power even more. Today it's clear that he enjoys full control. It's only recently that we've seen Altman's manipulation skills out in the open. His job changed when ChatGPT became so massive and the investment into AI got so crazy. Instead of just having to convince investors, he now has to convince the entire world that OpenAI specifically is worth the trillions that are in play. Recently, he's been doing the rounds on podcasts, making the standard claim that AI is the future.
Tutors, incredible AI medical advisors, but personally speaking, I'm so excited for AI for Science.
But he's had to change his tune. When ChatGPT was the only game in town, he was keen to make it clear that it was hopeless for anyone else to compete with their model.
Models, how should we think about that? Where is it that a team from India, 3 super smart engineers with, not 100 million, but let's say 10 million, could actually build something truly substantial?
look, the way this works is we're going to tell you it's totally hopeless to compete with us on training foundation models. You shouldn't try, and it's your job to like try anyway. And I believe both of those things. I think it is pretty hopeless, but
he was clearly kind of joking, but his comment at the end makes it clear that this was what he really thought. ChatGPT was a major breakthrough, of course, but the competitors caught up quickly. Google and other companies that rivaled OpenAI's resources were quick to respond to the challenge. But even much smaller companies could compete as well, like the Chinese startup DeepSeek and their AI model. Now that OpenAI are losing when it comes to how powerful their model actually is, Altman has begun pushing the idea that none of that even mattered in the first place.
When I was a kid, the race was like the megahertz race, and then it became the gigahertz race. Everybody wanted a computer with a faster processor. And, Intel would come out with this one, and then AMD would come out with this one. And it turned out that those gigahertz measurements eventually were not even that helpful. Like, you could have one that had a lower number.
It's also a great example of how he tries to appeal to regular people, but just ends up looking patronizing. It's not the only time he began a story with the phrase, "when I was a kid." Like that's the only way he could think of relating to normal people, by remembering things from when his brain hadn't properly formed yet. On different podcasts, Altman exposes himself in other ways. Just watch this clip of how defensive he became when Tucker Carlson brought up the OpenAI whistleblower.
You had complaints from one programmer who said you guys are basically stealing people's stuff and not paying them, and then he wound up murdered. What was that?
Also a great tragedy, he committed suicide.
Do you think he committed suicide?
I really do.
That's right.
The medical record, does it not look like one to you?
No, he was definitely murdered, I think. There were signs of a struggle, of course. The surveillance camera, the wires had been cut. And his mother claims he was murdered on your orders.
Do you believe that?
I'm asking.
I mean, you just said it, so do you believe that?
When you get deep into this case and look at the details revealed by the family's investigation, it becomes incredibly suspicious. Altman's reaction to the line of questioning does him and his company absolutely no favors here either. He clams up, either giving short answers or long-winded nothing responses with seemingly no emotions behind his eyes. He tries to shut down the question by appealing to respect for the family.
I respect that, but I think his memory and his family deserve to be treated with a level of respect and grief that I don't quite feel here.
Meanwhile, Tucker had the real respect to give Sochir Balaji's family time to make their case in front of his audience. When you consider the strange circumstances, the fact that there were no real warning signs, and the discrepancies at the scene, you can really see where they were coming from.
And I also don't understand why the authorities, when there's signs of a struggle and blood in 2 rooms on a suicide, like how does that actually happen? I don't understand how the authorities could just kind of dismiss that as a suicide. I think it's weird.
And it only adds to the pressure on future potential whistleblowers to not say anything that could damage OpenAI or Sam Altman. Then when you add in the predatory, incredibly restrictive NDAs that he makes employees sign, it does get a little worrying. Meanwhile, the other effects that OpenAI has had on the world today are just incredibly alarming. In her book, Empire of AI, Karen Howe investigates these in excruciating detail. She reveals the communities sucked dry by OpenAI's data centers. She talks to people in the developing world, hired on poverty wages to trawl through heartbreaking and mentally scarring content, all for ChatGPT's training data. Now you could say that this is all justified to bring the wonders of AI to the world, but really it's not a bright future either way. Think about the options. Even if you assume that Sam Altman is correct, things don't look so good. Should he really be a man that deserves all of this power? If AI really is this transformational, then he's going to be one of the most powerful men in history. And just look at how he's used his power already to see how that could turn out. On the other hand, he could end up being another Silicon Valley tragedy. Someone who built a whole lot of hype which eventually led to a spectacular downfall. Sometimes in the aftermath of a collapse, a moment from the past can come back and stand out. It can feel like the problem was hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to notice it. When Sam Bankman-Fried and his fraudulent FTX empire came crashing down, it was his infamous box interview he had given a few months before. In the clip, he pretty much describes a Ponzi scheme, but with new crypto words and extra steps.
This year, in X tokens being given out for it, that's a 16% return. That's pretty good. We'll put a little bit more in, right? And maybe that happens until there are $200 million in the box. So, sophisticated traders and or people on crypto Twitter or other sort of similar parties go and put $200 million in the box collectively, and they start getting these X tokens for it. right? And now all of a sudden everyone's like, wow, people just decide to put $200 million in the box. This is a pretty cool box. Now all of a sudden, of course, the smart money, it's like, oh, wow, like this thing's now yielding like 60% a year in X tokens. Of course, I'll take my 60% yield.
He ends his explanation not with people figuring out the box was worthless, but with this line instead.
Right, so they pour another $300 million in the box, and you get a cycle, and then it goes to infinity.
Of course, this wasn't how it ended for FTX. It didn't go to infinity, and eventually the speculation ended. When he was challenged on how shady this all seemed, he didn't even defend it. Altman was asked a very similar question in an interview about OpenAI. He was questioned on the astronomical difference between their revenue and their investment promises. Quite simply, how could someone promise hundreds of billions of investment with 1,000 times less revenue? He took a different approach, angrily denying the question entirely and pretty much saying that it doesn't even matter.
How can the company with 13 billion in revenues make 1.4 trillion of spend commitments? You know, and you've heard the criticism,
First
Sam.
of all, we're doing well more revenue than that. Second of all, Brad, if you want to sell your shares, I'll find you a buyer. I just enough. Like, you know, people are. I think there's a lot of people who would love to buy OpenAI shares. I don't think you would,
including myself. Including myself.
People who talk with a lot of like breathless concern about our compute stuff or whatever, that would be thrilled to buy shares. So I think we could sell, you know, your shares or anybody else's to some of the people who are making the most noise on Twitter, whatever, about this very quickly.
You can tell it's not how anyone expected him to respond. The Microsoft CEO was also on the call, and as the CEO of Microsoft and one of OpenAI's biggest investors, he clearly didn't like it. He immediately laughs awkwardly in response to the hostility and tries to change the subject.
And Let me just say one thing, Brad, as both a partner and an investor. There is not been a single business plan that I've seen from OpenAI that they're put in and not beaten in. So in some sense, this is the one place where, you know, in terms of their growth and just even the business, it's been unbelievable execution, quite frankly. I mean, obviously OpenAI, everyone talks about all the success in the usage and what have you. But even, I would say all up, the business execution has been just pretty unbelievable.
At the same time, it's clear from how defensive Sam Altman got that the question must bother him as well. It's the kind of hard truth that even he finds hard to dodge, and this is the crux of the problem with Sam Altman. ChatGPT is undoubtedly a great piece of technology, but is it really worth the hype? An app that's doing a few billion in revenue somehow worth hundreds of billions. And how devastating could this economic bubble that we now find ourselves in be? Well, depending on what happens next to the global economy, billions of people could have a big reason to hate Sam Altman. Again, thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to play it for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox or mobile now by using my links in the pinned comment or video description. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across PC and consoles, including multiple premium vehicles and other goodies. Available for a limited time only, so make sure to not miss it.